There you go.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the GEG England Spotlights podcast. I'm Peter Reeves, joined by Matt Harrison, and today we are focusing in on secondary schools, how they use technology and what tips we can take forwards into the future. We are joined by a large amount of people today, so let me reel them off. We are joined by Tom Wade, Madeline
Champagnie,
Charlotte Bleakley, and Emma Ferris. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. So we're going to go around just as a warm-up and go to each of you. Sometimes from the outside in, secondaries can seem like more mini businesses with separate departments. Can each of you just go through that one digital tool or digital habit you think interacts across all sections of the school? We'll just go around from everyone on my left to the right. So Tom, let's start with you. Just introduce yourself and tell us about that top IT tool.
Thank you very much. So, hello everyone. My name is Tom Wade. I am. I've got a new job title actually that started today. So this is the first time I said it out loud, just to make sure I get it right. So I am Director of Digital Innovation and Enterprise, and that is at a wonderful school called Haileybury in Hertford. We're an independent boarding school for 11 to 18. In terms of a really good digital tool, I'm going to start off with a really vanilla one so everyone else can then go for a nice, more exciting one. And I just think the best tool that I've seen that has crossed all the divides has been Google Classroom across the school. It's been the one that we could bring in, everyone got on board with, everyone could see the benefit to the workflow, to distribution, to the marking, to the recording. It's the one tool I think I've introduced and worked with the school that I've not had a single complaint ever since we brought it in. And that's from those who love technology all the way to those who don't want to touch a computer ever. It's been loved by everyone. So that's my answer, Google Classroom.
Amazing, vanilla but massive. I think that is a common theme come through throughout all our podcasts here, where Google Classroom gets named heavily. Madeline, over to you. What is your top tool, and just introduce yourself for us?
Great. So my name's Madeline Champagnie. I teach at Thames Christian School in Battersea in South London. It's a small, quite quirky, independent, non-selective, which is atypical for private schools. Yeah, you've stolen the one that I would have obviously said. And I'll stay away from AI stuff for the moment because I know we'll be talking about that a lot. But again, even more basic, spreadsheets. Actually, I know that sounds ridiculous, but we all use Google Sheets as our mark sheets, and you know, we're yet to find anything that's actually as kind of good as this good old spreadsheet for recording not only numeric data but obviously written as well. Yeah, I know that sounds ridiculous, but that is obviously the tool that we all work with really well and are happy to link together in multiple ways.
I mean, let's face it, if you don't love a spreadsheet, do you even IT?
You're well, quite.
I always take great pleasure in finding that one member of staff that you think wouldn't love a spreadsheet, that then gets so excited when you see them a really good looking spreadsheet. Charlotte, over to you. Introduce yourself and tell us about that tool.
Thank you, Peter. So I'm Charlotte Bleakley. I am digital lead and a media teacher at Roding Valley High School, just on the east side of London. And our feeder schools are actually Matt Harrison's schools, so get to work closely with him. And then
Can we just clarify each side of London means Essex?
Yeah, well, it's actually IG postcode.
Trying it
so
here.
It's Essex, London. We're fringe, okay? I get the fringe. So we also help Trust Chelmsford, so Trust Digital Learning Lead, which is quite new but quite exciting. And I think for my choice of tool that I see helping across all departments, and I'm starting to see with primary to secondary as well, even so all year groups, is Canva, one that we all know and love. But it could be taken anywhere from the computer science using Canva AI to introduce AI literacy, or just students making propaganda posters for Animal Farm in year 7. So it's obviously free and it works really well as a LMS as well as just fantastic resource. That'll be mine.
I mean, yeah, absolutely amazing tool. I remember I used to see that when you used to have things like Adobe come up, Canva was the free version of it. And the other day I saw a graph come up on YouTube that had Canva, and all the free versions of Canva came up. So I think I'm just showing my age a little bit there, but also how far that tool has come and developed. And last but by no means least in this round, Emma, over to you. What is that tool for you? And introduce yourself for us.
Thanks, Peter. I'm Emma Ferris. I'm the digital learning lead at Tring School, which is a comprehensive secondary school in Hertfordshire. And I think for me, I probably also would have gone with Google Classroom, but I think next in line to that has got to be Google Forms. I think kind of like Charlotte was alluding with Canva, Google Forms can go across all subject areas, you know, even something like PE or drama or music, something practical can use it for a quick you know, quick assessment or reflection, kind of self-assessment tool, all the way through to kind of, you know, computer science who might use it for more data-heavy things as well.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah, Google Forms is really that thing that pulls everything together.
Yeah, and what great introduction, and kind of a perfect segue as a primary digital lead myself, asking secondary teachers about the digital tools that they are using to get their pupils ready when they join them in year 7, thinking about something that can define your digital environment to provide a sense of consistency across obviously a landscape of, you know, different subjects, different areas in your secondary schools. What are those things that will help get them ready for that new environment? I'm going to start down. I'm going to go backwards now. Emma, let's start with you.
For that one, I think that probably has to be Google Classroom. I think for us, kind of the fact that Google Classroom is used across every subject, across every class, that helps with that sort of transition, that shared language. You know, it's a big change coming from primary school where they have, you know, one teacher in one classroom to coming up to secondary where they might have 15 different teachers and, you know, or in 5 or 6 different classrooms in one day. Taking that, removing the sort of cognitive overload from the digital side of things is really beneficial for our students. So we train all of our staff to label their Google Classrooms in a certain way, and that every piece of work goes on Google Classroom, and it's always got the date, the period, and the title, so students don't have to worry. We train them on how to find it at the beginning of year 7, and then that's it. They know where everything is, and it just makes everything a bit smoother for them.
So just on that structure, I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to throw it out to everybody very, very quickly. But are you talking about a single classroom for a year group or sorry, a class?
Oh no, so they'll have a different Google Classroom for each subject. Okay, yeah. Because everything is Google Classroom and it all looks broadly the same.
You have like a year 7 English one, and then
so there'll be 7A English, 7B English. 7.
Is that the same? Everyone else is nodding, I believe.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, there you go. All right, let's move on to Charlotte.
I think for that transition from primary into secondary, one thing that I notice is some schools are very reluctant to let their students, the year 5, 6s, have access to an email address that they can actually send and receive emails from and to. They might have single sign-on turned on, but the students actually never really know sometimes their email addresses. And that is a massive change to year 7 when they just get given an email address, a little bit of digital literacy in form time, and nothing else a lot of the time. And I think for logging into all of these tools, single sign-on is supposed to be turned on, but we are allowing them access to emailing their teachers suddenly, emailing their friends, without maybe a lot of support. So I think that's one area of transition that primary to secondary can do really well, or sometimes be ignorant of that change and not put into place so much. So something to be aware of.
And it's very interesting as we look into the crystal ball of the future episodes. I'm thinking about a conversation with Roddy where he actually spoke about something similar in higher education, in the sense of secondary schools not getting pupils going into colleges ready to use things like emails. So it's quite interesting to hear it from your perspective, lower down, primaries going into secondaries. So yeah, crystal ball into the future of the podcast. Madeline,
Yeah, totally echo the email etiquette issue. Yeah, I'm having to deal with that quite a lot. But I would say actually really basic IT skills. I had to help my year 9s the other day. Oh, well, actually it was last year, but you know, Control V, Control C. They didn't know how to do it, and some of them were shocked at that you can underline. I kid you not, I could not believe that this was a thing in year 9 and 10, having been in a quite techie school. So actually basic kind of things, knowing their way around a Google Doc, or even well, let's not mention the other guys, but yeah, knowing their way around a Google Doc. And I forgot actually the other tool we completely love and we would love to train students on is the tabs in Docs as well, is hands down brilliant for organization. So yeah, I would say just training on basic IT skills is very mixed.
Yeah, thank you. And then finally, Tom.
Well, this is the problem of going last, because I was feeling very smug last time getting Google Classroom out there straight away and listening to everyone have to try and copy me and elaborate on that. And I've just listened to every single good idea that I had being listed off one at a time. So I'm going to try and not repeat too much, but I completely agree with everything everyone has said so far. Google Classroom is our #1 tool. We also have a coding system as well, and I'd love to trade coding systems with you at some point. That'd be great. And we've tried to reiterate that over time, so we now indicate whether they're physically handing in work, whether they're not having to hand in work, whether they're digitally handing in work by the codes that we're using on the platform as well. We've learned over the years lots of things from the pupil perspective, so how we name classrooms is really important. At one point we were starting each classroom with the name of the year group. The moment we looked on the pupil device, you can only see the first part of each classroom, which meant they couldn't then find it. There's just said year 7, year 7, year 7. So we've learned that over time to try and make sure the pupil facing experience is what it is, and not just perhaps what suits us as teachers. You know, we're really clear on like when our prep deadlines are. You know, you can't, prep has to be set for 8:30 every single night, for example. I just wish Google would change. We're allowed to say that on this, that they would stop the midnight default timing on Google Classroom and allow me to change that, because every single one I have to change that myself. I completely agree with kind of digital literacy amongst pupils as well. Actually, we've had to really develop our induction platform and program for pupils when they enter the school, to the point actually now where we run the whole of the first half term of computer science is now just focused on digital literacy. And actually we are a one-to-one device school, but actually we have a PC suite as well, and we make sure that we get pupils having experience of using both platforms. And we, in the first lesson, it's if you can get past them logging in with their password in the first lesson, our lesson, you made an absolute win. I've seen pupils kind of stroking monitors thinking that they're touch screens, you know, they've never used a mouse before, for example. And so I think I become more understanding of them. Actually, we think they're coming tech savvy, but they're not. They're coming phone savvy, or perhaps iPad savvy, but they're not coming with any other understanding. So the fact they can do shift for a capital letter, they don't know this sort of material. So we've tried to create a really, dare I say, basic induction platform where we go through all the Google suite one at a time to try and train them up and actually just get some competency going.
Yeah, I think they're all really interesting responses, because I know from a primary perspective, this is something we're trying to work on as well, trying to get pupils, I don't want to say more digitally literate, ready for the world that is today. So, yeah, I think, you know, it's really good for me to hear that, because I know that we're kind of going in that direction of writing our digital skills and thinking about things like emails for primary school children, and giving them that exposure sooner rather than later.
It's been really interesting as well, picking up from primary, secondary and higher further ed, the same issues coming up all the way through. And maybe it's less about this little one looking at it as a first off induction and looking at it as repeatable skills that need to be reinforced throughout the education system, and really getting those links going. Because the idea of email, folder structures and basic skills have come up in every single talk we've done. Now let's think about something a bit more large scope. Secondary can be high pressure sometimes, focusing on exams and developing young people and getting them ready for the next stage of education. So sometimes innovation can feel just like a bit of extra work. How do you find time for that digital innovation? And what does a successful digital strategy really look like when you start planning it out and picking it forward? Let's start with Madeline. Do you want to start us off with this one?
Yeah, forgot to mention I'm innovation leader and head of English as well here. So yeah, I definitely think it's actually about change management. That's certainly the thing that I've found. Once you've got the hang of the tool, or frankly, once everyone or people have got the hang of the idea that the tools are constantly changing, should I say, that it's about change management. And I've had to accept that not everyone wants to become a tech bro, basically. You know, I'm super keen on all the techie stuff and I want to go charging ahead, but I've had to really kind of work on myself in terms of understanding that it's not about just forcing it down everyone's throats and banging on about AI at every possible opportunity. So as well as whole school CPDs, there's been a lot of side-by-side work. I've literally just had a one-to-one with a history teacher, for example, and I've set up calendar slots that people can book with me, where we can just talk about stuff. And, you know, meeting people where they're at is very much the way forward, I've found, when they're in the middle of a thing which AI can genuinely help them with. So for example, school reports, I just use Gemini to in a very highly personalized way, hoovering the data, like I previously mentioned, from my spreadsheets, obviously anonymized, to create really personalized reports, which are arguably more personal than I would have written before, because I would have been cutting and pasting my own words from previous years. Being real, we all do that. And then being able to sort of share that with people whilst they're in the midst of, oh God, I've got to spend 5 hours writing year 9 reports, and going, aha, I just did it in an hour and a bit, and let me show you how. I think that's a really important way forward. Recognizing the social, emotional, psychological kind of aspect of letting go of tried and tested ways of doing things. For some people, they've had those ways of doing things for many, many, many years. And also recognizing that those things were once cutting edge in their time as well. So, you know, understanding that it's not, oh, you dinosaur, but it's actually, you know, the thing that was a dinosaur before was once the shiny new thing, you know. So I think it's a very human response, you know, and sharpening each other hurts, you know, sharpening ourselves hurts, learning sometimes hurts, you know, and I think that is really the way forward that I've realized right now, as well as, of course, all the, you know, CPDs and newsletters and this and that and all the rest, and sharing videos and, you know, screencasts. Obviously we do all of that, but actually for change to happen involves the kind of human side-by-side conversation, I think.
Brilliant. Did anyone else want to jump in on what they think that successful digital change can look like and that strategy? Tom, go for it, and then we'll go to Charlotte.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that was just raised, actually, about not getting too attached to tools. I think tools change, they update, they change their interface, and I think if you're struggling with technology, when these sort of things happen, it can be really stressful. I get excited at a redesign, but I completely understand that people are very attached to things and they finally feel like they've got how it works. When that changes, that can be incredibly stressful. So I think innovation needs to be mindful of that. You know, Google Classroom, as we know, is about to get a massive redesign, and that, I know, that's going to send shockwaves for all the teachers who have spent years going, I've got this and I love this, and it's about to look totally different. That's going to cause a lot of discomfort, I think, amongst staff. And so we really try to ground that in now, and I haven't always done this, but understanding that the tools are the last thing in our understanding, you know, taking that pedtech approach of what is our intent, what is our pedagogy, and then the tool bit happens, and actually be prepared for those things to change and develop. Actually, you know, we have a digital subscriptions budget. It hasn't gone up for a couple of years. Subscriptions are going up through every year, and so actually sometimes we have to say this is going. You know, we try to bring in consistency amongst tools around the school. When I took over the digital subs budget, I discovered we had 12 different quiz platforms going on around the school for pupils, which was a disaster. We need one quiz platform that everyone can use, and that caused a lot of discomfort for a lot of staff because they were losing their kind of precious ones that they'd spent years developing. So I think that that approach to tools is really, really important. And I think how we can support teachers in that is great. I think of a teacher when I joined the school, she would spend ages every lesson creating the most beautiful mind maps on her whiteboard. And we brought in devices, and she was like, well, you can't give me a device, but this is what I do, and this is my teaching. And it was beautiful, actually, what she was doing. It was great. And then eventually I managed to convince her one lesson just to try doing it on her device with her stylus and draw on it, and she could see it appearing on the board. And then when she finished the lesson, I went, and guess what? You've got that now. You can keep it. And actually, you can now send it to your class, and they can now see it. And it was just a really tiny thing. She didn't have to change much about what she was doing, but she suddenly realized that what she had created now could exist forever, as opposed to now being furiously rubbed off at the end of the lesson before the next class came in. And that's such a small thing, but I think it completely began to change her mindset on what technology could potentially do for her.
And, you know, at this point where we're talking about change and changing apps, can we just all hang our heads for a second and say RIP Jamboard? And we can all think back about that loved program that was with us for so long and burned so brightly. Charlotte, what did you want to chip in there?
Although controversially, Jamboard, as a teacher who has students who like to edit and delete and move each other's work, I'm still waiting for that one product to come out, which only allows maybe certain students to be able to edit each other. Anyway, yeah, future tools. Very quickly,
teacher lock function on Canva, basically, don't you? For some,
yeah.
for some, there used to be a program that existed natively within whiteboards that did that. And I'm going back before I was a trained teacher that did that, and you could lock elements to the screen. You could only move it if you were a teacher, and that seems to no longer exist anywhere in anything. So
I know you can do that on Canva. You can do that on Canva on the whiteboards. You can, as a teacher, lock certain elements that they can't then move. I discovered that the hard way after I tried it the first time, and everyone moved stuff around. Then I went and looked into it. You can now actually lock the background or whatever, so they can only do certain things.
Tom,
yeah, they were demoing that at BET, actually. I had a go with it. There was a demo of it. It's pretty cool.
It doesn't stop them moving each other's. It just very quickly is that we've had a real push in grounding all of our PedTech and sort of CPD at school and through the trust with research. And one thing that's really stood out to me is this theory by two people called DC and Ryan. It's called the self-determination theory for motivating your staff. And it's really stuck with us. And it's sort of taking the next step from change management. And they say that the 3 best ways of motivating staff to come on board with you rather than force that top-down heavy approach is through autonomy, mastery, competence, and relatedness. So autonomy being that they have still got the choice, that you're giving them options. You're not telling them you have to do this. You're leading them to water and letting them choose the best tool because they're the expert. Competence being, how do we put that ability in their hands, their mastery? Do we give them enough support to feel confident in these tools? And finally, and this is probably what we get a bit from the GUG community, that relatedness, that we actually have a community and we want to do well, not only for, you know, ourselves, but students, our school communities. And those 3 pillars work really nicely for help and support staff rather than just telling them what to do. Just there.
Brilliant. Cool.
Do our audio listeners get to see the love hearts? There's some love there for that one.
We're doing love hearts. Little love hearts to each other.
You're doing your Korean
Love
morning.
hearts.
Korean love hearts. I only did it one-handed. I can take a selfie and do a love heart at the same time.
Oh.
I'm just old school. That'll always be a love heart for me.
Oh, you can do 2 love hearts.
Just fingers crossed. Right, we're going to move into a more focused conversation. I'm going to give each of you your own kind of questions. It does not mean, though, that you can't jump in on each other's questions, help each other out, give each other some more tips and tricks. But we're going to start with Charlotte and AI. We've arrived at the topic of AI as always. So, Charlotte, you've done incredible work on AI for workload. For a secondary teacher, drowning in lesson planning for different key stages, what is the single most effective AI shortcut that deserves quality but saves an hour of planning time?
Controversial question. I'll tell you why. Because there are a lot of people out there, like teachers of AI, that say that AI does not save you time or should not save you time. It should be able to help you accomplish a task, again, maybe a basic task faster, but that time as a teacher should then be spent adapting, enhancing to help your students further. So the equivalent would be, instead of one excellent worksheet for your Year 7 English class tomorrow, maybe you using AI, for example, Gemini, Google Docs has now got Gemini written into it for the paid for versions as well. You would be able to not just create that excellent worksheet, but you'll also provide a choice board for the students who have finished that worksheet. You'll be able to give some writing and sentence prompts ready for the students who need a bit more scaffolding. And all of that would take you the same amount of time as the one worksheet. However, I think what we're going to see is adapting in the lesson instead of that prior planning coming out more and more, so that we don't spend so much time at home planning. We have AI at our fingertips, so we can suddenly get an extra quiz in, because I've noticed that my students don't know much about King James I for their Macbeth context. So on the fly, while they're finishing a task, I can quickly ask Gemini to make me a quiz or a match-up task on King James I in order to deal with the missing knowledge that I noticed straight away. So I think that AI's most benefit will be the live adapting in lessons.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you on that principle, Charlotte, about, yeah, it's, I always see it as giving time back that can be used for something else. You know, I've seen some really good lessons where, for example, gems have been used in the lesson, and then it's in, okay, how do you now continue that lesson, because the gem has sped up part of the lesson that perhaps would have taken 30 minutes before. Now it takes 5 minutes. What do you now move on to do in that 25 minutes you've now freed up? How does it affect the learners?
I really do need someone to sit down with me with gems. I know that I need to know more about it, and I just haven't quite clicked with it yet. Emma, coming over to you. We're going to have a little look at feedback at scale. So in secondary school, teachers can be dealing with 200 plus students a week, depending on the setting, maybe even more. Even in my tiny school setting, I still go through all 94 students in the school in a week. How do you use tools? Maybe something like Mote or Screencastify, rubrics in Google Classroom, or for me, even something as simple as the comment box in Google Docs and Google Slides, to really delve in and get that high quality personalized feedback. What makes that achievable to you?
I think just the fact that being able to give verbal feedback using something like Mote or Screencastify, or even the new kind of recording features that are built into Google Classroom now, you know, just the fact that I can say so much more, and we as teachers can say so much more in 5 minutes than you could write in 5 minutes, means that your feedback is going to be deeper, it's going to be better, it's going to be more personalized for the student. Having everything digitally also means that you can kind of go through stuff. It's easier to do whole class feedback as well, which again saves teachers a bit of time and helps reduce that workload. But it's also really valuable for the students. If they've got a digital recording of someone talking through their work, you know, the power of being able to go back to that over and over again and kind of go, oh, right, I wasn't quite sure what you meant by that bit. And they could go back and they can listen to it 2 or 3 times rather than having that conversation in the classroom and going, yeah, totally get it. And then you come back around 10 minutes later and you go, right, you haven't actually done what I asked. And go, oh, yeah, well, I didn't understand. You know, you've got all of that there for them. You can link it to other resources. So you can go, right, here, I'm going to show you, you haven't, you know, I teach languages and a bit of computer science, but I go, right, you haven't really understood the passé composé in French because you've clearly made a whole load of errors throughout your whole piece of writing. Here you go, have a look at this. Here's this tool here, and link that in it kind of through Google Classroom. So I think all of those features help to streamline it for staff and make it more accessible and useful for students.
I would throw out there as well, any maths teachers listening in, it's totally possible to do in maths. I used to, even before things like video recording got more prevalent, I used to have every Wednesday, my class used to come in and they knew that I'd have all of their marking done verbally in Google Classroom, just in a blank doc. So they'd go in, they'd listen to the feedback that I gave them in front of their maths books and then go through it. So there are really easy ways around that, even if you are doing work in books.
Tom wants to jump in.
Can I jump in on a feedback tool? Because I've found this is the area that teachers are most hesitant at where I work. They feel most concerned about this. They are worried about the implications of feedback at scale. And actually, I've had some pupils voice that they don't feel comfortable receiving AI-generated feedback as well, actually. So I think there's a really interesting discussion and balance to be had there. And I don't think they want to feel like we're thrusting that upon them suddenly, because it does slightly remove that connection between the teacher. Having said that, there are some interesting things that I think are worth exploring at the moment. We haven't actually brought any of these in yet, but we're kind of at the exploratory stage. Actually, I've been really impressed with Brisk feedback, for example. The ability for it to kind of generate comments on a Google Doc is really impressive, highlighting sentences on an essay and giving comments that are so much more detailed than I would ever give back myself, based upon, you know, the mark scheme and the rubric, all in draft form, so the teacher can edit them and change them. But also now they've brought in batch feedback as well. So I set an essay recently and I was able, just through my Google Classroom, upload it via batch feedback. It went through all of them in about 2 minutes. But what was useful for me as a teacher, actually, is before I even then had looked at the essays, because you got to approve the feedback, is I got a whole class feedback document it produced for me about these are the areas that were really good, these are the areas to consider next. And then because Brisk is really excitable, it was like, hey, let's now make some tasks based around the areas of weakness together, and let's make a Google slideshow and all that sort of stuff. So I think there are some really exciting things developing at the moment that are worthwhile exploring. But as I said, I think it's an area that is particularly controversial still.
Yeah, totally agreed. It is one of those things where you've got to strike the right balance and be honest with your students about how it's coming across.
And I'm also pleased to hear about Brisk, not from Charlotte. So we know Charlotte is a Brisk champion.
Hashtag Club Brisk.
Also, AI comments coming to Google Education Plus soon as well.
So the silo issue of subjects in secondary schools can be obviously a challenge as well, Tom. So how are you making sure you're bridging between departments these tools? How are you making sure everyone's involved and getting the tools right for their subjects?
So it's a really good question. So I think there are a number of different ways of doing this. I think some of them is just being available for departments, first of all. So they feel they have people to go to for training. But actually, I think a really good point was made earlier, which is that when I first started talking about digital strategy, I think I went a little bit too top down at the start. And actually now I've tried to reverse that very much. And my opening line is often, as head of department, you are the expert for your subject. And I make sure I get that line out first before I do anything else, actually, just because some tools don't work for everybody. So I really try to make sure that what I do is provide a toolkit for staff and then say to them, you are the expert, you make the choices of the ones that will suit you. So I've got a document which I call apps for task, and I've kind of gone through all the different class tasks that I can kind of think of, general tasks that appear, and I've tried to provide kind of 3 apps for each. Now, most of these are built into the Google Workspace, actually, but it's actually kind of app signposting what Brisk can do in multiple different ways, or we use Wayground, how that can use in different ways, and so on and so forth. So I try to provide them with a toolkit, give them the mantra of intent pedagogy tools, and then kind of say, you're their department, however, you make the choice for your setting, essentially.
Yeah, we ran half a day of training actually in January, where we leaned in heavily on, I don't know if you've heard of Nick Potkalitsky in Ohio. He's written quite a lot, both on LinkedIn and Substack about this, on DSAIL, which is disciplinary specific AI literacy, which is the same idea. And we basically asked departments to get into department groups and look at basically do SWOT analysis around AI and their own subject, obviously strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And yeah, it's the same sort of approach, which is I can't know absolutely everything that there is to know about every single tool for every single subject. So, you know, it's putting it out onto them to, you know, have a look. But I have suggested things like Masolit videos are fantastic. I don't know if you know Masolit, though that has its own Gen AI within it. They're brilliant. And things like JSTOR as well. The AI within JSTOR can be really helpful for different subjects finding what they need. And it's going back again to that kind of human relationships and meeting people in that moment where they're at, where that head of department's looking for something, saying, oh, actually, have you tried that? And I would just say it's, you know, it goes back to quality rather than speed. Actually, I'm finding now I'm kind of dialing back, like you said, Tom, from the whole kind of speed things up. And I'm not super convinced myself as an English teacher anymore about using AI to mark, because then it's essentially moving information from the pupil via AI, but it hasn't gone through me. So I then lose that engagement and that knowledge with the pupil's work. And I'm aware it's easy for me to say in very small class sizes. But yeah, that's with the silos, that's what I'm doing, is, you know, suggesting that people work within departments equally.
Emma, did you want to jump in on that one as well?
Yeah, just to pick up on a few points that have been made by various people, I think, earlier. Like Charlotte mentioned earlier, kind of this is where I think the GEG community comes in really useful, because, you know, you might not have another computer science teacher in your school who you want to talk to about this stuff, or who is as willing to talk to you about kind of all of the technology side of things. But finding kind of your wider community and having a wider reach, that people you can ask, and kind of, we've done quite a lot of work where we've paired up teachers from departments at our school with equivalents at other schools, just to kind of share ideas and talk about how they're using technology. And that's worked really well, because people like to hear from subject specialists. So I think that really helps too.
And Tom?
And sorry, just to then bookend this. So I think the other thing that I've tried to do this year is try and bring it much more into our professional development program as a school, so that it's not always coming from me at the front, because I think otherwise every time I stand up on the stage, everyone groans at an inset because they know I'm going to start talking about technology. So we've got different working groups at the moment exploring different apps. I've got one group is exploring Notebook LM, one group is exploring GoodNotes, and so on and so forth. So they're doing this, they're going out, they're trialing, they're doing the research, they're across departments. At our Easter inset, they are going to present their findings. So again, it's not just coming from me all the time at the front. I think it's really important that we break down the silos, that we've got different departments working together. And then actually, I think as a teacher, I would be more likely to trust what my colleague in science has said than perhaps me every single time who's standing up and saying the same things.
I'm the science specialist. Yeah, and I completely agree with you. I think that those who know me, Charlotte, relatively well in the sense of, it's really important for me championing the people in the classroom, because I've not taught now for 4 years. I've not been at the front of the classroom for 4 years, but I'm bringing a digital strategy into schools. But it's really, I feel it's the most important part of my job is to listen to what's going on in the classroom and how those tools are being successful, just like you're talking about in those other departments. Like, if it doesn't work for them, then let's detour, let's look at something else.
Yeah, even in small scale schools, I've got a couple of teachers trialing Google Class tools for a couple of weeks this week to give us feedback on it to move on. Madeleine, going over to you. I think we touched on this earlier, the idea that we assume that secondary school students are these digital natives, but actually there can be core skill gaps missing. How are you using your setup there to help really target these digital skills and these digital skill gaps, and what are we doing about moving students forward?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, basic skills are sometimes lacking. I think because our school is so small, we only have a roll of 200. It's very, very personalised, so it will come up organically within lessons. And I know I can't really give you a strategy because we're so small and quite unusual like that. It will be very much subject based and within a lesson. So, for example, within English, we'll be talking about email etiquette or how to use a Word Google Doc, Word doc. Google Doc, successfully, but then cross-fertilizing over with perhaps history and all the other humanities as well. Whereas in maths, they will be doing more work around how to show equations on a screen and that sort of thing. So I can't really answer that in terms of a kind of whole school strategy, because being real, we don't have one, because we're really small and bespoke, and it will just be organic in and of the moment. But yeah, it is. I am increasingly surprised at how students don't have the skills that we assume that they have. Keyboard shortcuts, actually. I was talking with Year 10 the other day. They're doing War of the Worlds, of course, what else? And they get, for example, getting the whole text up on Project Gutenberg, and they're trying to look for a theme. Okay, Control F, look for the theme of whatever. So, and one of them was like, oh, what was that thing you showed me the other day, Miss? Yeah, Control F. Oh, yeah. So it's things like that. It's sort of similar to the way which we deal with the adults, is in the moment when it's needed, that's when you learn the thing you need to learn. So same with the students, basically.
Talk, Charlotte.
Thank you. And completely agree. Obviously, like, how do we get the digital literacy just embedded into our lessons, especially if we do have, especially at secondary, when your minimum of usually 1,000 students. So one thing that we've noticed is how we're assessing students is changing, not just because they might be using AI, and are we teachers just marking AI, sometimes with AI, and then fed back via AI to our AI students, and it becomes a vicious loop. But one way that we can upskill our students sort of, as a strategy is changing the ways that we assess them. And obviously, Google have just brought in the voice recording and the screen recording, etc., for teachers, but we're also going to see the student option. So rather than just students adding essays all the time and learning, hopefully, to underline and use capital letters, we can get them to create their own voice recordings, their own podcasts, maybe filming their own plays. So just part of the digital strategy is encouraging our students to be using a variety of tools, digital literacy, in order to show their knowledge, which hopefully, obviously, we take that from Year 7 all the way through, will develop that digital literacy over time and give a bit of variety to how we assess them.
Who knows? Maybe even exam boards will catch up with this one day as well. Wouldn't that be grand? Tom, do you want to bookend us again on this one?
Yeah, I just want to shout out 2 tools, actually, if that's okay, because actually, yeah. I think the first one is, so we work with Canopy to get our Google license, and they provided us with How Do You videos as part of the Google Classroom suite. And it's amazing because I can assign them like an assignment to Google Classroom, and they're tutorial videos through all the Google Workspace, through every single app. So I make all of our pupils do that now in their first half term as part of their digital induction, and they get passport badges, bronze, silver, gold. They love it. As a teacher, I can see a spreadsheet as it's all filling up, and it's self-guided. And I think that's it. And they've been really motivated by that, actually, because they want to compete with each other, make sure they get all the badges, but they're also then learning all the fundamentals of Google Workspace. So that, if you haven't explored that, do explore that. The other one then is touch typing. We've been trying to get our pupils better at typing, and typing.com actually does what it says on the tin. It's brilliant. It's got gamified learning on it. They've got the 1-minute typing tests. I was just looking at my stats very quickly. I've got one pupil in my class who, since she started, has improved 190% in her kind of speed and accuracy and everything else, which is insane, really, because she was genuinely typing with one finger, swirling it around for each time, and now she's typing looking at the screen, not looking at the keyboard. And again, I was really, not really, I was quite cynical. They wouldn't quite like doing touch typing, but I told them last week we were moving on from it, and they were genuinely annoyed because they've been having such a good time on that platform. So yeah, I think it's really important we explore those 2 areas.
I would say I'd suggest the Golden Keyboard Awards. I did that a couple of years ago, and suddenly the kids that just wanted this spray painted golden keyboard, it took it through the roof. Kids were so engaged. I used to do weekly leaderboards as to who was typing the most words and who had the most improvement, and they absolutely loved it.
And yeah, great shout out to the Canopy How Do You. I mean, I get staff to do them. It's just great staff CPD as well for staff to do at their own time and pace to get used to the Google tools as well. So we're going to wrap things up with a quick fire question for you guys. If you had to sum up your biggest tech tip for the classroom in 3 words, what would they be? I'm going to give you a very short amount of thinking time. I'm going to go pick on Emma first.
Okay, right. Find one thing is my 3 words. So it's about finding the one thing that's going to make your life easier or make your students' lives better in some way, whatever that is. And it'll be different for everybody. But yeah, find your one thing.
I'm going to go Charlotte.
I'm going to go, don't forget fun. And I think with this topic of secondary, we can get so caught up in the GCSE content that we forget how kids actually want to learn and the curiosity around it. So don't forget fun is going to be my 3 words.
And yeah, thank you, Charlotte. And for the audio listeners, as I asked that question, Tom took a moment to write down, think about his response. So Tom, let's hear your written response.
I'm making notes. I was panicking because I knew everyone else would have really eloquent good ones. I've gone for consistency is cool in terms of experience for the pupils.
Words I didn't think I'd heard put together this evening. Consistency is cool. I want that as a T-shirt.
You got to get that in with your kids tomorrow, Peter.
Yeah. I'm a young Enterprise Spitalfields Market tomorrow, so I will work that in some way.
And then Madeline.
I'm just going to go with start with Notebook LM.
Yeah, there you go. That counts. Yeah, what a nice wrap up to the podcast. So we're going to just wrap everything up. So thank you, Tom. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Charlotte. And thank you, Madeline, for joining us on the secondary episode. This is the second in our series of classroom retrospectives. Are we calling them? I'm not sure what word we're going for. We'll go for retrospectives on this one. Next episode, we're looking at post 16 with Roddy Peters and with Alex House. And we finished this sequence of podcast episodes with a deep dive on SEND. So again, thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.